Hello and welcome back to the Pulse of Spokane. I'm your host, Ryan Meza. It's a beautiful Spokane day here today. Great weather. Hopefully things will keep looking well and not so hot for us today. I'm joined with a very special guest today. She's a Spokane born and raised, went to Ferris High School and Gonzaga alumna as well, mom of two, educator, nonprofit, or coordinator. And I'm joined here with Katey Treloar. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, definitely. So school is starting back up again for the youth, K through 12. You're a big part of the Spokane Public Schools. And I just want to talk to you about maybe you seeing the schools in all three angles as a mother, a student, and as an educator here in Spokane. So what are some of your concerns going back to school, or maybe some things you're looking forward to?
Well, I have to say I'm pretty disappointed in our public schools right now because they have decided that everyone's going back virtually. And if you look at the reports done by the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the WHO, they say our kids need to be back in the classroom. And our schools aren't offering the choice to go back into the classroom. I think our families need the option to go virtually, but for those of us that need to be back in the classroom, we need that option. And so I just really wanted to talk to you today about some options. I think it's time for parents to get creative. And if Spokane Public Schools is not working for them this year, then we need to look at how we can help their kids get back into a learning environment where they can be face-to-face with an instructor.
Yes, exactly. And we were just talking before earlier how it's so important for kids to have that kind of relationship with their teachers. I know for me growing up, I remember all my teachers growing up, they had such a significant part of my life. And just being able to come back in person would be really big for them. Yes. And I know you guys started a Facebook page called Open Spokane Schools, and can you tell us a little bit about what that whole Facebook group is about?
Well, to be honest, I did not have part in opening that, but I definitely am so happy that that is on an option for parents to go to and look at and see the progress that we're making to get back into our schools. We need to put pressure on the administration and on Bob Letts and say, you don't know what's best for our kids. You guys are not pediatricians. You are not educators in any way. So no one on our school board right now has any professional experience in education or with early childhood development. And none of them have children kindergarten through 8th grade. So none of them understood the stress and the anxiety that families were feeling last spring. And they keep saying things are going to be different this year. But for my sources, they are really struggling. And there's a couple of options that we can talk about today for families if they're thinking Spokane Public Schools is not a good option for them.
Definitely. Let's talk about those options. I saw a few that Spokane Public Schools was discussing about just like daycare options for maybe families that aren't able to like be at home with their children. But what are some of the options that you think would be beneficial to go back in person?
So first of all, the daycare that Spokane Public Schools is offering is $25 a day per child.
Wow.
So if you add that up, that's $500 a month. And that for our families that are at risk, that's too much. They don't have the opportunity to go back. And this is daycare. So these kids are going into the classroom. They're being supervised by a non-certificated educator, teacher, and they're going to be online for 6 hours. So if they're in the schools and they're in the classroom, why aren't they with their teachers?
Exactly.
So $500 to do that. If you could use that money for something else, there are some options, like I keep saying.
Yeah, definitely.
So the first one, are these micro schools. And the one I'm most familiar with is Prenda. So if you go to prendaschools.com, that's the one that's really taking off in Spokane. And these are small classes, so 8 children with a certified instructor, in-person learning, and it's project-based. So as a former teacher myself, that's a teacher's dream come true. We've always wanted small classrooms, project-based learning. We know that's what's best for kids. So if a parent is interested in doing that, they can go to prendaschools.com and get some information. The other option is kind of a homegrown cooperative homeschool. And so that's what my oldest son is going to do. We found a retired teacher who is going to open, again, a small group, 8 kids in her basement, multi-age, so 4, 5, and 6. And she's going to follow Common Core. She's going to use curriculum that the district may or may not be using, but it's real hands-on, project-based, and our kids get to be together and have socialization, and they're in a safe spot. And so I really encourage families to look into micro schools and these just kind of homegrown schools, or small schools.
Definitely. I know, especially those smaller classrooms, you get to build such a strong relationship with your teachers, and they can build better relationships with you and also pay more attention to what your student needs.
Right.
So that's very beneficial for them, I feel like.
I know. And we talk about, how worried people are about contracting COVID in the classroom. But here's something else that we need to think about. We need to think about the trauma and the abuse and the neglect and the hunger that our kids are facing. 80% of our kids in Spokane Public Schools get free and reduced lunch. So that means 80% of our kids are at risk for one of those things that I just was talking about. So if that's happening at home, we need to get them back into the classroom, because that's where they're identified by teachers and counselors, and that's where they can get their help. And it's not at home with families that just don't have the time or the means to help them.
Yeah, definitely. And you said during the spring you went back and volunteered with the At the Core Bite to Go, and you kind of went door to door handing meals to students that rely on those school meals.
Yes.
And what did you see when you went door to door and just visiting those families?
It was heartbreaking, because I was in parts of Spokane that I haven't spent a lot of time in, and until you're driving around and you're knocking on the doors, you don't understand the depth of poverty that some of these families are living in. So when you're dropping off bags of food for the weekend, so we were just dropping off breakfast, lunch, and a snack for Saturday and Sunday, and kids would run to the door and be so thankful, and parents were thanking us. And that's what they're getting at school. We need to get our kids back into school. We cannot let fear drive our decisions around this educational policy.
Yeah, most definitely. It's devastating that's part of our reality right now, and hopefully we can get our students back in the classroom.
Yes.
I also want to talk to you about the supplies that Spokane Public Schools are offering. I know I was just looking on their website. They're going to give each student a laptop. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. Is that mostly just for students that are going to do the virtual option all year, or the kind of part-time in person as well?
I believe any student from Spokane Public Schools can get a laptop. Okay. And they are working really hard at getting hotspots and internet for all these kids. So they're going to have an internet connection. They are going to have access to a laptop. But here's the problem. Yeah. You can give them all of these items, but if a child doesn't have an adult in the home that's getting them online and helping them troubleshoot, they're not going to log on.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
we can give them everything, and we can want them to be online, but unless there's someone, for my kids last year, so just to go back a little bit, last year I was a mom. I have experience teaching. I have 2 boys that don't have any kind of behavioral or academic struggles. I had a husband that was working. I had everything stacked in my corner to be successful. I really thought it was going to be okay.
Thriving.
And it was hard for me. So not just hard, there were tears, and there was just overwhelming sadness amongst our family. And I thought, if it's hard for me, I can only imagine what these other families are experiencing, families that are working full-time, or families that don't have an educational background. So I just thought, okay, we have to get these schools open in the fall. And so when Spokane Public Schools announced that they weren't opening, my heart fell. Yeah, and so we need to work with the Open Spokane Public Schools Facebook page. We had a rally last week. It wasn't too well attended, but we have to start small and we can build big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I know, even with parents working from home, some aren't working from home and don't get that luxury of just being there with their families, and also being able to be a part-time teacher as well. What do you have to say for families about that, that aren't able to stay at home with their children and maybe leave them alone?
I'm so sorry, and there are people and there are organizations out there that are willing to help. So I know that the Prenda, and I'm not just pushing Prenda as the only micro school, but I know that Prenda does have scholarship available. I've actually asked Spokane Public Schools. So Spokane Public Schools gets $13,000 per child from the state.
Wow.
So that's their allotment for every child. So I've talked to the school board and I said, if our kids aren't in school and they're not using the air conditioning and they're not, using our buildings, can we take part of that $13,000, half or even a quarter, and give that back to our families, even if it was $2,000 or $3,000, just to help with a tutor or to help with your decision to go to a micro school or to help with babysitting. And so I just think if we can get families to come together and have a voice and say, we need this money or we need to be in school, we can work as a group and get our kids back to school.
Definitely. Exactly. I love that. And I love how you're just able to see these problems and be able to tweak them a little bit.
Yeah.
Just like make them flow better and be more realistic and beneficial to everybody involved.
Well, and one more thing. So Prenda was started in Arizona, and it was used as for schools that were failing. And so in Arizona, it's actually funded by the public schools. So I know the gal that's here in Spokane that's working really hard to get this option to other families has also asked the school district to help her and say, can you help us fund some of these kids that need to be face-to-face learning in small group? Can you help us with some scholarships? And unfortunately, our district has said no. But I think if we have enough people know about it, rally around it, we could get them to help us with a little bit of funding.
Definitely. What would be the best way for parents that agree with you, want to send their kids in person? What's the best way for them to rally behind this cause and be able to support it?
I join the Facebook group. Second, write a letter or write a letter to our school board or attend a school board meeting. And those are actually pretty easy to attend these days because they're on Zoom. So you can just do it in the comfort of your own home and tell our school board that we're not happy with their choices and that parents deserve the choice to decide how their kids are going to be educated.
Most definitely. That's great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we head out?
No, just we need to get our kids back to school.
Yes, most definitely. In-person learning, for sure. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Katey. I really appreciate you and all the knowledge you want for the Spokane community.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. That's all the time we have today on The Pulse of Spokane. I'm your host, Ryan Meza. Have a great day.
At Wendell Nissan, you're respected, you are valued, and we have an experience tailored for your lifestyle. WendellNissan.com allows you to research and find the perfect vehicle and financing information prior to arriving on our lot. Whether it's the 2020 Rogue Sport, Rogue, or another Nissan model, our trained staff will help you find the perfect fit. For your tailored experience, come see us at Wendell at the Y or WendellNissan.com.
When we opened the doors the first day, we started with a counter full of maybe a dozen selections of a dozen cupcakes. We sold out and it just went crazy from there. I'm Sally. I run Sweet Frosting's Blissful Bake Shop downtown Spokane. It's almost 40 years of baking for me. We now do between 1,000 and 2,000 cupcakes a day. The variety of cupcakes is kind of like the variety of services that STCU provides for us. Since we opened this site in 2014, they've been our banker. We are producing for 4 stores right here, so we have 35 to 40 employees at any one time. There's an STCU close to virtually every one of my stores, and every time I get a new employee, that's the first place we send them. STCU is such a good fit, it's just so convenient for me to have them as neighbors. They are always so pleasant and always so helpful, and we have a lot of little needs. They've always been behind me 100%, so it's a good thing to have that partnership.
Here at River Ridge Hardware, we carry a great selection of Krylon brand spray paints, Color Master, general purpose, the Rust Protector for taking care of metal, Fusion for taking care of plastics, and the Super Max that can take care of it all.
Weather in the inland Northwest can wear you down. And if your gutters are in poor condition or you do not have gutters, you could suffer damage that could cost a fortune to fix. Rainman Seamless Rain Gutters has almost 30 years of professional experience in serving the inland Northwest region and strives to ensure customer service that is second to none from the time you call to the end of the project.